All right, guys, this week, as promised, we're going to do our first VMAT plan just as an introduction for next semester. We're going to use the same head and neck patient that you guys have already created, so no need to create a new patient. We're going to treat this PTV 70 volume right here. All of you should have that volume in your structure set. It's labeled 70 gray, so we're going to treat it to 70 gray, and we're going to focus on just a few OARs. So our parotids, we're going to try to lower the dose to our parotids. And we have our cord right here and our brainstem. All right, let's add our plan. You're going to add a plan just like you would any plan. I'm going to choose my PTV 70 as my target volume. You'll want to create a new reference point if you don't have one already. I'm going to use TrueBeam. And we're going to use 6x. That volume gets pretty close to the surface right here, so we'll want to use that 6x just to make sure we have good surface dose. All right, the field, your isocenter should automatically be added to the center of that volume, which in this case is good. That's perfectly fine. We'll use that. We'll go here to planning, our geometry tool. Your PTV 70 should already be highlighted if you choose it as your target volume, which is good. And we're going to use one isocenter, 2 full rotations. And again, the reason it recommends 1 is because we only need 1 probably to cover this volume very well by 70 gray. But this tool does not know that we also want to spare the parotids, spare the brainstem, spare the cord, things like that. So in order to get proper OAR sparage and good coverage, probably going to need those two full arcs. I'm going to leave my columnar angle at 30. I'm going to leave the complement angle selected. So what that'll do is add one arc at 30 and the other at the complement 330. So 30 degrees one way, 30 degrees the other way. All right, I'm going to put my prescription in, 200 times 35, 70 gray. That's it. We're ready to start planning. To get started, you're going to come up here to planning, optimization, optimize. All right, if you see this window, we actually want to cancel because we want to use the new optimizer. So if you come here to calculation models, VMAT optimization, and you select this calculation model, instead of PRO, we want to use the PO. All right. So now if we come here to planning, optimize, we should have the new optimizer. All right, and we are going to use, or we're going to get started by just using our PTV. All right, so what I did was add a lower objective. So this is the lower objective button, or no, this is upper, sorry. Here's the lower objective button. So I did a lower and I did an upper on my PTV. The lower, I'm telling it basically 100% to get 7,000, so a min dose of 7,000. I'm telling 0% to get 7,350, so basically a max dose of 105%, 7,350. For targets, I use a priority of 100. So that's all I'm going to put in right now. I'm going to check these 2 boxes, okay, and I'm going to hit start. Okay, here we go. As you can see, in real time, as you're optimizing, you can see your DVH, you can turn structures on and off in that DVH, and you see your isodose distribution over here. So you can monitor your plan as you're going and adjust your objectives accordingly. Down here, you can also see your progress in the optimizer. So we have 4 levels here, and if you look right here, we have different steps within each level. So I want everyone to focus on those steps and pause in certain places. So we added our target, and we're gonna let it get to step 3 in level 1, and we're gonna hit the pause button, all right? So basically I start with my targets, I get perfect coverage. I want my DVH to be very, very vertical right here. So no cold spots, no hot spots, just great coverage. Your plan should be conformal. The way it does that is with this normal tissue objective right here, but we'll go over that next semester. For now, it defaults to automatic, it defaults with a priority 100. That's great. We're just going to leave that alone. But that is how the plan knows that it needs to be conformal, as well as get good coverage and minimize hotspots. Once you get to step 3, I pause it, and now I'm going to start adding my OAR objectives. So like I said, we're only going to focus on 4. Brainstem, cord, and both our parotids. All right, so let's start with the brainstem. We're going to try to get the brainstem below 54 gray. So if I want my max dose to be 54 gray, I'm not going to put 54 in here. I'm going to actually put 53, something slightly below 54, priority of 50. Now, if we look here, our brainstem is abutting our PTV. It is right next to our PTV, maybe a millimeter or two, in between there. So you have to just think in your head, can we fall off from 70 gray to 54 gray in just a millimeter or two? And you just can't, not in a conventional fractionated plan at least. You just can't do that. So we need to allow our PTV to get a little bit cold, basically. So I put this at 5300, priority 50. I know I have to allow the PTV right next to my brainstem to be cold. Hopefully we can do that while still getting at least 95% covered, right? So we're going to go for that classic 95% coverage, meaning we're allowing 5% of our PTV to get cold, and I want all of that cold PTV to be right next to the brainstem. Makes sense? So I'm going to change this to, 98% maybe. And hopefully this will drop a little bit for us. Let's maybe drop that to 5200. So the way I'm going to get this to really fall is by upping my priority, but just to help you guys follow a pattern, we're going to leave that alone for now. Where's our cord? So our cord, we want that to be below 4500. So again, we'll put it a couple gray below 4500, priority of 50. See, that fell a little bit. We need it to go a little bit further, but again, we'll leave it alone for now. Last but not least, our 2 parotids. So our parotids, we want a mean dose less than 26 gray for both of these. So to do that, I actually like to use this objective right here. But we might leave this for next semester too. We'll talk about what that means. For now, we'll just use this. This is a mean objective right here. So if I want my mean dose to be less than 26, same thing, I'll put a couple of gray less. Priority of 50. You see that did fall very quickly to where we want it to be pretty much. So it was easy for the optimizer to do that basically. Same on this side. This PTV volume is slightly, more right-sided, right? Especially down here, you can see that PTV goes off to the right, overlaps with that parotid. So I would expect it to have a little bit more difficulty with this constraint. You can see in order to meet that constraint, it did make our PTV right here really cold. So we'll just have to, again, kind of balance those two constraints, the low dose or the lower objective on our PTV, and then this mean constraint right here. But again, the whole idea behind VMAT is you have really good control over your dose, right? So we're gonna, like I said, we're gonna try to get 95% of this volume covered by 7000. any cold spots I want to be next to the brainstem in order to get that max dose down. And if it has to be cold right here where it overlaps with our parotid in order to meet that mean dose constraint of 26 gray, we'll let it be cold there too. So now we have some choices. So like I said in class, I watched these two graphs down here. So this graph right here, since it's leveling, these lines are leveling out, that means we're really not seeing any change or any improvement in our plan. So I need to either push play or add something over here. In general, I really suggest keeping your OARs at 50, your targets at 100. But having said that, a lot of times with max doses, you need to up your priority in order for them to meet. So these max dose constraints, not these mean doses, just these max dose constraints, I have them basically set right where I need them, right? We want this below 54, so I have it just under that. We want this below 45, so I have it just under that. Because they're just we must meet those constraints no matter what, I will bump up the priority, to match our targets, because no matter what, we want this below 54, this below 45. So we can let that think a little bit, let this level out, or at least I suggest you guys, let that level out. Once it does kind of level out, we'll push play. In each step, it will spike right here. Always, never a bad idea to pause and let it level out a little bit before you move forward. For the sake of this video, I'll just let it keep playing through though. Once it gets to level 2, pause it. Just to maintain really good coverage, I'll add an extra lower. We already lowered this to 98% just to allow us to better meet, some of these other constraints. But I'll add another lower slightly above 100% with a little bit higher priority, 120, just to make sure we maintain that coverage. You can also do other things. So we know we want this brainstem to get to 54, but we want to maintain good coverage on our PTV in general. So maybe you add an extra lower, and I say I want 100% of my PTV to get at least 5400. Same thing, add a little bit higher priority on that just to make sure it does what we want it to do. The other thing I do when I pause at level 2 is I add an upper on the body. And again, we'll go over why I do this, why I think this is better than just pushing on the upper of the PTV next semester. But for now, you can just kind of copy me. I put 0%, 105 on the body, but I put a really high priority. We'll do 300. Usually I do 300 or 400 depending on how big the scan is. But like always, after we add those constraints, we'll see these spikes. Always a good idea, let it level out a little bit. So I suggest again, let these level out in each step after each spike. Once it gets to level 3, I will pause it again. And here's where you can really fine tune your OARs. So if we turn some of these off and we just look at like the brainstem, if you look at this DVH, you can see we're practically meeting this constraint. Probably, more than 99% of this OAR is meeting this constraint, right? Meeting this constraint. This teeny little tail is above. So basically a very, very small percentage of this OAR is failing this constraint. That's why when you hover over it, even though it's not doing exactly what we want, more than 0% is getting above 5200, right? It's all just a percentage thing. So since such a small amount of that volume is getting above, the cost function is only a little less than 3%. So it's not working very hard on this constraint at all. So in order for us to meet this, we just have to keep upping this priority. Small jumps, so I'll just add like 20 at a time, let's say. So 120, you can see it comes down a little bit, but it really, even adding that extra priority, it just has a very small effect on the plan, again, because it's just teeny tiny spots that are failing. So we really probably have to bump this quite a ways up in order to get under that 54. So going up to 200, you can see made a little bit bigger spike, but still our cost function barely changed. 300. Now we're getting somewhere. So now we're finally dropped below that 5400. So we'll leave that one alone for now. We'll probably have to do the same with the chord. You see just a teeny tail. So you'll see a lot of planners adjust this dose too. They'll drag this constraint backwards, which lowers the dose. But I really don't like doing that because I want to allow my brainstem to get dose as long as it's under 5400. So if you unnecessarily lower the dose part of the objective, it can just have negative impact on your plan and do some weird things. So I usually don't lower the dose more than I need to or more than I want to. I really just adjust this priority in order to get that constraint met. So this one I want under 54, so we're good. This one I need under 45. But again, it's a very small little speck of this OER that's not passing, so we'll probably have to use a pretty high priority. Again, going all the way up to 200, very little impact. And again, it's because just it's such a small little speck of that OER is failing. If I were to do 300 or 200 on some of these other constraints, so like these constraints, this cost function is already 26% on this constraint. So if I bumped this one up to 200 or 300, it would have a giant effect on our plan. So you got to be careful with your priorities. You don't want to use too high a priority on the wrong structure. But again, this is just an introduction. We'll go over all of this quite a bit better next semester. So this chord did finally fall under 4,500, so we'll leave it alone for now, or just watch it closely as we continue through. These prods are under 26. We don't have any hotspots. We should only be cold in those areas that we need to be cold. So if we zoom in here next to the brainstem, we're cold next to the brainstem. Makes sense. If we scroll down next to our parotid, cold next to our parotid. Again, makes sense. So now I'll let it play. In step 2, we'll see a spike, so I'll pause it. Just make sure this brainstem and this chord stay under where we need them to be. So this one is under 54, this one is under 45. So again, I would let it level out before I continue, but to make this video faster, we'll just continue. Again, you could pause, but I'm just letting it run through. Always a good idea to run intermediate dose. So that's this second check mark down here. If for some reason your clip system is very slow or something like that, a little bit older, or you have a standalone box that doesn't quite have the computing power, it's okay to uncheck that and skip intermediate dose. If you have if you're treating an area with a lot of inhomogeneities like lung, or even if the bowel has a lot of air in it, stuff like that, you're gonna want to calculate intermediate dose. It will improve your plan quite a bit. But if there's not big inhomogeneity changes like that, the impact is a little bit smaller, and you can get away with skipping this intermediate dose part. But for most places should have enough computing power to make this go pretty quick, so I suggest just leaving it on. So again, if you remember from class, intermediate dose, basically this optimizer is running using a little bit less accurate algorithm to calculate this dose, just to make it go faster. Then we calculate what we call intermediate dose, which just uses a little bit more accurate algorithm, to calculate. And then it's going to throw this plan back into level 4 of the optimizer and kind of let the optimizer clean up any small discrepancies, that it found in that dose distribution. And hopefully then our final dose calculation agrees with what we see in the optimizer a little bit better. But again, we'll see some slight changes when it does the final dose calc, because again, it's using a different algorithm. It's going to come up with a slightly different result. But the point of intermediate dose is to just kind of bridge that gap, so that hopefully what we see in the optimizer agrees a little bit better with our final dose calculation. But if you noticed, we didn't really see much change. Again, it's going to help more when you're treating areas with a large difference in density. Okay, after this dose calculation, we want to normalize our plan to whatever coverage we want. For this one, we're just going to do 100 covering 95. And that's it. We should hopefully be done. So we have the coverage we want. Our hotspot's only 108.6. But if we kind of scroll through here, you can see we have those dots of 105, but very, very few little specks of 107. So it's really a pretty good plan. We're very conformal. All we need to do is check our OARs. So our brainstem max dose 5230, so that is below 54. That's good. Cord 4331, so it's below 45. That's good. And our two parotids, both mean doses are below 26. So fairly easy plan. Good introduction though to VMAT. In a real clinical case, we would try to get these even lower, and we'd be focusing on more OARs and stuff like that. But for now, this is all I want you guys to do. Hopefully, it does not take you too long. You can see I got that done in one run. If you have any questions, let me know.